The following podcast has not been rated. You're listening to Fullbacks Are People Too, The Fact. And here's your host, CJ Newman.
You're listening to Fullbacks Are People Too, The Fact. What a week we just had coming off of last weekend's NFC and AFC championship games. A lot of controversial calls, but we do have winners, and they're both the number 2 seeds. The New England Patriots are going to face the LA Rams for the NFL's biggest title, the Super Bowl championship, in 1 week. This weekend is a Pro Bowl, and I don't give a shit. So I would much rather talk about what's going on today in the NFL and going on today on the Fact. So today I have coming on the show, Chef Chad Wells is coming back as a guest co-host this week because we have a special guest. By the way, thank you very much last week to PFT PM Posse, to The Real Forno, and to AFlow_ for coming on the show. Really appreciate that. We got really good numbers out of that, and I really appreciate you guys coming on board. Thank you guys very much out there for listening to the show last week. Got a lot of great feedback, and I really appreciate that. But this week with Chef Chad, we're going to be interviewing our first player, believe it or not. Former player, former defensive back in the NFL. He played for the Oakland Raiders, Tennessee Titans, Baltimore Ravens, the San Diego Chargers, and the New Orleans Saints. His name is Chris Carr, former cornerback, former defensive back. So this one's a pretty lengthy one. I'm not going to try to sit here and bullshit you for any more time. I'm going to go ahead and try to present this to you. So without further ado, please, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy Chef Chad Wells and I interviewing Chris Carr. And welcome back to the FAP, ladies and gentlemen. This is a pretty special week this week. I know I swore in the beginning that I would never have a NFL player on my show, but this week I've actually got a chance to get one on, so I couldn't really say no. But before I get to him, this week I've got, coming back to the show, I've got Chef Chad coming back. Chef Chad, how the hell are you?
Good, man. Good to be back. Hope everything is going well. It's fucking freezing, but, still keep rolling.
Yeah, it was like 50 degrees the other day, and now it's 28, and then Mother Nature's a woman, I'm telling you.
Yeah, pretty much.
So this week is actually, as I said, pretty special. I've got a former cornerback for the NFL. Chris Carr is going to be joining us on the line here. Chris, how the hell are you?
Doing well. I'm doing well. In D.C., not far from you guys, so I know it. The weather's been bad, and it's been good and off and on, but can't complain. It's not Minnesota. It's not Chicago.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
So, Chris, I got to ask you, man, let's start back from the beginning here. If we're going to really go back as far as we can, just so we can cover a lot of your career and we can cover what's going on post-career and whatnot, too. You graduated from Robert McQueen, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you decided to go to Boise State. Were there any other colleges or universities in the running for you?
Yes. University of Nevada, Reno. They were on me hard. They were recruiting me hard, but they were terrible back then. And I always wanted to be out of state. I wanted to leave for college because I knew that I could always come back and live in Reno forever. And Washington State and Hawaii were the other teams. But all three of those other colleges wanted me to play receiver because I played running back in high school. I didn't play too much defense. But I knew at my size, I was only about 160 in high school. I knew that offense probably wasn't going to be my best position in college. And I just felt with my quickness and my skills, I felt like, hey, I can learn how to be a cornerback and do well doing that. So Boise State wanted me to play cornerback or / safety. I knew that eventually I could do some return work too as well at Boise State. And they were good at the time too, so the choice really wasn't that difficult.
Well, that's very good. So academics seem to be a big priority for you in your past and in your current life. So did Boise have anything to do with, as far as your choices, did you have academically, did you want to choose Boise as well, or because I noticed that you stayed all 4 years at Boise. You got the Pat Fuller Memorial Award for academics. So you lettered all 4 years. Did you want to make sure that you were good to go as far as academically before you went to the NFL if the NFL didn't work out?
Yeah, I think, well, I stayed all 4 years because I had to at least stay 4 years there, because at the time, Boise State players weren't leaving early. But the past 10 years, you've had a lot of NFL players from Boise State who have left after their junior seasons. But I think me going into college, my main mindset was just football. And I did well in high school just because I felt like I was smart. I didn't try to take the hardest classes. And I had some type of pride in my mom. I knew I couldn't come home and with bad grades because my mom would have killed me. But in college, my big thing was whenever I see everybody else doing something, it kind of makes me feel uncomfortable. When everybody else is acting like clones, it makes me uncomfortable. So I saw a lot of football players and the athletes not going to class, not caring about things, being lazy in class, sleeping in class. And that just always made me uncomfortable. So I think at the time, when you're 19, 20 years old, you're starting to grow up and starting to realize things. And I started realizing that I was interested in more things than just football. And I looked at what everybody was doing and I kind of figured like, hey, this is probably not what I'm supposed to be doing. So that kind of kicked me in the butt and enforced like, hey, I need to actually pay attention to my studies because you're going to be an adult here pretty soon and you can't play football forever. And at that time, I didn't know I was going to play in the NFL. It was one of those things like, hey, if I can make it, maybe play a year or two, that'd be great. And if I can stay healthy too. So my mindset, especially after my first semester in college, was really, hey, you're here to be the best football player you can be, but you're going to be on the street here pretty soon. And so you better do well in school. So yeah, that was my mindset.
So question real quick about leaving college and heading to the NFL. When you went undrafted, correct?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Did that piss you off?
No, I think at the time I felt that I was good enough and that but I was kind of unsure. And I always kind of had that same mindset from high school to college. When I was in high school, I grew up in Nevada and I was so much better than everybody. But at the same time, I was like, I grew up in Nevada. I wasn't in Texas. I wasn't in Florida and California, where all the major superstars always come from. So in my back of my mind, I'm like, well, maybe I might be good in Nevada, but maybe I'm not that good because I haven't played against people from Texas. And at Boise State, we played in the Big West Conference and the WAC Conference, and we weren't playing the SEC schools or the Big Ten schools. And so I was like, well, I think I'm really good, but I didn't play in the SEC. It wasn't until I got to the first day of training camp, or the little mini camp, actually, before I graduated in April, after I signed, and I thought I was better than every other rookie that was there. And that gave me the confidence to say, like, no, okay, you just were overlooked. You really are the best rookie that they have.
That seems to happen a lot.
What'd you say?
I said that seems to happen a lot, especially in the NFL these days. It seems like right now we're seeing a lot of people explode that are either undrafted or late round picks that end up having incredible careers. So how many teams contacted you when you first went when you were an undrafted free agent?
Yeah, so on draft day it was the Giants and the Falcons and the Raiders. And they kind of contacted my agent like in the 5th, 6th rounds and saying that they might select me, but they're not sure. But they definitely were going to offer me a free agent contract. And so when it came down to after the draft, I wasn't selected, and all 3 teams called and they made an offer. But we looked at the rosters, and the Raiders just released Phillip Buchanan, even though they just drafted a guy in the 1st round and 2nd round, Fabian Washington, corner, played with me in Baltimore, and Stanford Round, another corner in the 2nd round. They didn't have a returner at the time because Phillip Buchanan left. So I felt that I could really come in there and compete on special teams and make the team on special teams. Whereas I think in New York and Atlanta, they had established return specialists. And I thought I probably wasn't going to get a shot to show what I can do at cornerback. So the Raiders really looked like my best option on paper.
Now remind us, who was your first head coach when it came to the Oakland Raiders?
Norv Turner.
How did you feel about him? How do you feel about him as an overall head coach?
Yeah, as an overall head coach, I actually had him twice. In 2012, I went to San Diego. And so then in 2005, I had him in Oakland. He has a very good football mind. When I was there in Oakland, I think he was too relaxed. He let a lot of players get away with murder. But to be fair to him, Al Davis really runs that organization. Well, he ran that organization. So a lot of players knew that they can get away with murder because Al Davis was never going to cut them. So I think there might have been a little bit of, I can say something to these players or suspend them or do this and that, but Al Davis isn't going to like it. So I'm just not even going to worry about that. But because by the time I had him in San Diego, I could tell that he changed a lot. He was more into disciplining players. He wasn't as relaxed as he was prior. So I'd say he's a good head coach. He gave me a shot, so I don't want to say anything bad about him. There's really nothing bad I can say about him. I mean, obviously, he hasn't had as much success as like a Harbaugh, for example. But yeah, I think he was a solid football coach, and he's definitely proven to be a solid offensive coordinator.
Now tell me a little bit about Norv Turner. He grew up in the offensive side of the football. How much time did he actually dedicate to the defensive side of the football, and how much in depth did he get to it, or did he let his defensive coordinator basically run the show?
He let his D coordinator run the show. And I think that's the pattern of most NFL coaches. If they come from a defensive background, they usually are more concerned with the defense and vice versa. I think I heard Belichick is heavily involved in both aspects, but a coach like him is rare.
Asterisks.
Yeah. Then, Harbaugh, he's a special teams background. So he was kind of more just management, making sure that people are doing what they're doing. What they're supposed to be doing. And it's weird looking at Harbaugh because he's really like what you expect, like a head coach. Like, hey, you're going to let your other coaches coach. And I'm just here to make sure that, hey, if I need to go in there and see if there's any friction or we need to change some things. I think he's had a lot of success at that. But I do think you are kind of at a disadvantage sometimes when you don't have that knowledge set. Defensively or offensively, to really put that input in that needs to be done in certain occasions.
Now, let's not skip ahead of ourselves here. We'll talk more Baltimore in just a second. But did you know that you're actually the all-time leader in kickoff return yardage for the Raiders at 4,841 yards on 201 attempts?
No, I didn't know that. You could put an asterisk on that too. Al Davis he cuts a lot of players, so a lot of people don't stay in Oakland very long. So I think that's probably the reason why.
So here's a question about the Raiders. So when you were there, I'm sure you saw Al Davis a lot, just roaming around or doing what he did. Did you ever see Mark Davis at the time? Because I have an interesting question about him.
Yeah.
Did he have the same stupid fucking haircut that he has now?
What, Al Davis?
No,
yes,
Mark Davis. It's
Mark Davis, that nasty bowl cut.
I don't remember seeing Mark Davis.
Really?
I don't remember him, yeah. I just remember seeing Al Davis every day would come out to every practice on his walker, and he'd be waiting on the plane after every game. And we usually lost every game too, and he would just yell at everybody that if you had the quarterback had too many interceptions, Kirk Collins is going to get screamed at.
Was it incoherent screaming?
Somebody else, yeah. Well, he was really old at that point, so he's not screaming like Bobby Knight in 1988, but he was still intimidating. He was the owner. So yeah, every day he came out to every practice. I just remember him in his jumpsuits, his Raider suits that he used to wear every day. Yeah, his brother, I don't remember him at all.
I was also told that he had at least by Howie Long, I was told that he has a distinctive cologne. Did you smell his cologne whenever he came on the field?
No, I never got too close to Al Davis to really.
Cologne. It's Old Man Musk, because I do believe he lived to be like 162, 163, if I'm correct.
Something like that.
Yeah, I think he was older than what his birth certificate said.
Yeah, by at least 70 years.
I mean, the guy goes back to the AFL days, the original.
Yes.
He was a commissioner for the AFL, so it's amazing how far he goes back in his lineage and how long he lasted. And he didn't have a coronary anyway between that. I was just very surprised overall. But you had a pretty decent career in Oakland. You had, like I said, you were the leading kickoff return and yardage specialist. You had a cup of coffee in Tennessee. Was Jeff Fisher your guy there? Was that your head coach?
Yeah, he was there. Yeah.
How was he as a head coach?
I thought he was a great head coach. Just 1 year, it's really hard to analyze somebody just based on 1 year, but
that team was good, man. That team was good.
Yeah, we had a really, really good team that year. He was smart. And we lost to Baltimore that year, but I don't think it was from we'd let up or he was too loose with us or we got overconfident. I just think it was one of those things. Sometimes you get in the playoffs, and if somebody gets in there, they're really playing. They don't have that much expectations. They really have nothing to lose, and they're playing more freely and not as much pressure on them. And Baltimore got hot at the end of the season.
Yeah, Matt Stover won that game, if I recall.
Yeah, he did win that game. But yeah, I thought Jeff Fisher was a good coach. I thought he was pretty knowledgeable about both sides of the ball. He made some decisions I think that were best for the team at that point. There was a little incident with Vince Young. Vince Young kind of went crazy after one game, and nobody could find him, and his mom was calling him, and the Titans were calling him, nobody could find him. And Kerry Collins ended up starting for the rest of the season, and it was kind of controversial at the time, but it was really the best decision for the team. I remember we weren't in pads for the first 10 weeks of the season. Every day we're just out there with shorts and helmets, because I think he realized that you guys are physical and you guys have that mentality, and he had enough experience to know that, hey, I can take care of these guys, but on game days they're really going to show up and they're going to be physical and they're going to do what they have to do. And not every coach is going to have that experience and that mindset to be able to make that decision.
And this is before he started his 7-9 bullshit out in St. Louis, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so that must feel bad for him, because as soon as he leaves, the Rams just take off and they're like the best team in the NFL.
Right. Yeah, he had like kind of a carousel of quarterbacks that sucked ass under him, and then all of a sudden they leave Jeff Fisher and they're beasts, and then he leaves Goff, and Goff is playing in the Super Bowl next week.
Yeah, it's crazy. Did he have Goff only his rookie year?
Yes.
For 2 years.
He had Goff and Case Keenum both at the same time.
So at the same time.
Backing up just a tad bit on this, you were a restricted free agent going into the Tennessee Titans. You were offered a deal by the Titans, but the Raiders declined to match that. I was just curious how you felt about that. Did you feel betrayed by the Raiders at that point, or did you just feel like it was business? What did you feel?
No, I was happy. I think in Oakland we went 5-11, 2-14, and 5-11, or 4-12. I mean, it was just dismal. And Al Davis, I wasn't an Al Davis guy. So the only reason why I played because I had Rob Ryan and Chuck Pagano going to bat for me. And so I really wanted an opportunity to leave. And I thought I did have a good opportunity because being an unrestricted free agent, if a team, a lot of restricted free agents at the time, I'm not sure what it is now, but a team would have to give up a draft pick based on what round you were drafted. So if I was drafted in the third round, the Titans would have had to given the Raiders a third round pick if they wanted to sign me. And usually a team doesn't want to sign you for a bunch of money and give another team a draft pick. But in my case, I was undrafted, so I knew that Tennessee could sign me and not have to give Oakland a draft pick. So I thought that was advantageous for me. But yeah, I was just really, once I signed the tender sheet with Tennessee, I was just hoping, please don't sign, please don't match, please don't match. And I knew that Al Davis, he would have brought me back for cheap, but since I wasn't his guy and he never really wanted me playing for them, that I knew that was very unlikely that they were going to match Tennessee's offer.
All right, so let's get into some fun stuff too. You got any crazy locker room stories?
Oh man, should I tell you some Oakland Raider ones or
bring it on, whatever you think is best.
I feel bad. I don't want to share any Baltimore ones. No, in Baltimore, I would say in Baltimore, when it comes to, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why Baltimore's had so much success. And I'm sure for you guys, it should be more. But looking at other organizations, Baltimore has done quite well for itself for the past 15, 20 years. Or really since, when did Baltimore get a team? 96?
96.
96, since 96. But yeah, in Baltimore, we used to have the greatest times. We used to play cornhole a lot of times in the locker room. Sometimes we'd shoot dice in the locker room. We do that a lot. And always just ragging and making fun of each other. Was fun. I remember one time, Ladarius Webb, if he hears this, hopefully he forgives me. And him and this one guy in the practice squad, I forget the guy's name. He was on practice squad, and they were just going back and forth, like, you're ugly, you're stupid, you suck. And they're just going back and forth. And you could tell Webb was getting really upset because, like, this guy's on practice squad. He's acting like he's a Hall of Famer, and this guy's really getting too comfortable. Then, so they're just going back and forth, and Webb, and in that type of environment, the more upset you get, the more it's like a shark smelling blood. Like they see it, really keep egging and pushing and pushing and pushing. Then finally, Webb is just getting all upset. Then I forget the guy's name. He's like, no, hold up. No, let's get serious. I really want to ask you a question. When you sleep at night, and he lays down on the cornhole and puts his face in the hole. He's like, "Do you have to sleep on a do you have to sleep with the cornhole? What's it called? The sheet or whatever. So your nose, because your nose is so big, you have to sleep with your nose in the cornhole hole." And everybody just lost it. And I felt so bad for him. I had to like turn around and like leave the room because like I knew Webb couldn't handle it. That was one story. I mean, in Oakland, it was, remember the movie Soul Plane?
Yes.
Every game after the game was like Soul Plane in Oakland.
Really?
Yeah, there was like people shooting dice in the halls, boombox, blasting in the back. You had guys watching porn on their DVD portable sets. Guys yelling and screaming, rapping. It was. And when we just lost the game 50-7, 49-7. I mean, it was the most unembarrassing, like craziest time every week. It was like Soul Plane. I would be like, this is like Soul Plane. And then when I went to Tennessee, everybody's just sitting really straight in their seats. It's just quiet. Nobody's playing cards. Everybody was just quiet. I was like, man, this is like a completely different league. Like, this is a completely different thing. But yeah, it's hard to really pinpoint stories here and there, but and plus, you know, some of the stuff is personal. I don't want to, you know, sometimes there's some bad moments. People did some bad things and acted certain ways. But
hey, we're not going to pry from you. Anything you're willing to share is just going to come to our listeners.
It's Warren Sapp. Wasn't the nicest man. I want to say that in the locker room.
Did you say Warren Sapp? Is that
Warren Sapp?
Yeah. I've heard plenty of stories about him and how he's hazed rookies and all sorts of shit. So I could definitely see him being one of the guys that's been part of crazy locker room stories.
Yeah, he sucker punched an undrafted center after a training camp practice one time.
Jesus.
Yeah, just sucker punched him right in the jaw. Yeah,
I just called him a dumbass afterwards too. And
it's like unbelievable.
Probably convinced him it was his fault too. I could see Warren Sapp doing that type of shit.
Yeah, because they were doing one-on-ones and the guy was doing too much. But come on, it's like you're a rookie, you're undrafted. You don't have the luxury to like let up. You really have to go full tilt. So he didn't like that. Don't do that to the great Warren Sapp. But yeah, that was interesting. But Oakland, that stuff like that happened all the time. It was just
Like a WWE locker room?
Just Oakland. That's Oakland Raiders.
So let's get into the Baltimore Ravens a little bit. You know that this is near and dear to CJ and I. You were with the Ravens in 2009, 2010, and 2011.
Yes.
I do want to say this and put me on record for saying this. I believe the 2011 Ravens was the best Ravens team that they ever put on the field in the history of the franchise. And I do mean that. I think that team was amazing. That team should have been in a Super Bowl. That team was better than the team the following year that did win the Super Bowl. And I just want to be on record in saying that. I think that is the most complete football team that has ever been produced in Baltimore.
Think about the talent on defense that was on that team. You had Chris there. You had Ladarius. You had Jared Johnson, Terrell Suggs, Ray Lewis. Donnell Ellerby was just coming up in the ranks. I mean,
Ed Reed.
Yeah, Ed Reed, of course, and our favorite strong safety, Bernard Pollard. So
smashing machine.
Yeah, the Patriot killer. So tell us a little bit about the when you first came in 2009. You had a wild card game. I'm sure you might remember this. You happened to get an interception off of the asterisk greatest of all time, Tom Brady. How did you feel after that whistle came right by you and came into your hands?
Yeah, I felt good. I mean, I think every year that I played, I've always played well at the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just one of those things that towards the end, people start getting mentally fatigued, and you can really see the team's tendencies and patterns at that point. So I was able to study the film for the Patriots, that whole entire season. So going into the game, and as well coached as that team is, their offense at times were kind of predictable, and I would know what was coming. So I felt comfortable coming into that game because I think the previous couple of games I had some good games. Because I think towards the end of the season, I think Fabian or Webb tore his ACL, then I started. And I started getting comfortable, and I started playing well. And going into that game, I was really confident. And we were confident. We weren't sure that we were just going to blow them out the water, but we did. But yeah, it was a good game. That was one of the coldest games I ever played in too. I'll never forget that game.
So was when you caught that ball, that interception, was it easier to catch from being so deflated?
Yeah, it was. It was really soft. It was like marshmallow. So years later, when it was the deflated gate, I was like, oh, that makes sense. The ball was really soft then.
Did you actually get to keep
just
that
like
ball?
Tom?
I forgot all about the plate gate. I just forgot all about that. Because my mind also, the biggest thing to me was the whole tape in the practice.
Spygate.
Yeah.
Because that was like, nobody, at the time, nobody really cared. And it's like, that is like cheating, like at the worst level.
I agree, yeah.
Wasn't it the Rams walkthrough, the one that started all the accusations originally, the Rams in the Super Bowl? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's something like that. And whenever there's like a controversy, like you hear like Bill Cosby raped 5 people or R. Kelly raped 3 girls, it's like 100. It's always worse. It's always worse than what you think. So when they filmed the Rams, that wasn't the first time they did that.
Oh, hell no. No.
Right?
No.
That wasn't like, we've never done this before. We're never going to do it again. I would bet a lot of money that before that time, they recorded other people. And so it was just I've always just looked at that incident and how that was kind of like a slap on the wrist. Then when the Saints had their whole like bounty gate thing, and I thought that was completely the whole thing was nonsense to me.
That was a makeup call, to be honest with you, from the NFL.
Yeah. I didn't think the Saints did anything wrong, and I'll defend that to my death.
I have a slightly difference of opinion, but that's just because my favorite quarterback of all time is Brett Favre. Yeah. And I think I don't know if the whole the whole Bounty Gate shit was really playing a role in it. But I think that the aim of that game was to try to remove Brett Favre from it. And it really, really, really looked that way. And it took for the Saints to win that game, it took 6 Brett Favre turnovers for them to eventually win in overtime. I mean, they were taking dirty shots at his knees. I mean, I'm all for seeing hard hits and fun football and seeing people mash each other. But at the end of the day, I really feel like Brett Favre was getting fucked pretty hard in that game.
Did they call any unnecessary roughness calls?
If I recall, because I was pretty irritated when I was watching it, but if I recall, I think that a lot of shots went unflagged and then a lot of fines went out after the game. CJ, does that sound accurate to you?
It sounds about right. I actually just watched that game a couple weeks ago, and I can't recall all the penalties because there was a lot that should have been called. There was a lot that didn't get called.
Yeah, but, watch it again, because my thing was, okay, up to that point, you can watch a lot of games, right, where you're just like, oh, they should have called that unnecessary roughness on Flacco. Did you see him? The guy hit him late. And there was a lot of games like that. But I remember a Sports Center, this whole Bounty Gate, and they would show all these Saints highlights. I don't remember seeing one highlight. I was like, oh, my God, he was trying to hurt him. I didn't see. I mean, there's one thing. It's like, oh, he's walking on the sideline, and 5 seconds after play, he hits him in the bat. He hits him in the knee with the baseball bat like Nancy Kerrigan. Like, I didn't see any of that. So my thing is it was just like a motivator. If you have 2 boxers, this is my analogy I like to use. You have 2 trainers. One trainer saying, hey, I want you to kill this guy. I want you to break his ribs. If you break his ribs, you don't have to pay me as much money, okay? And I want you to knock him out, and hopefully he's dead. And if you kill this man in the ring, you're never going to have to pay me again. And you have another trainer, the other boxer, that's saying, hey, I want you to go to the body. I want you to work his head. I want you to use the jab. You might get the knockout, but not. But if you can go ahead and get it, okay? But go out there and play smart and box smart. Once they get in the ring, both guys, for all intents and purposes, are trying to knock each other out. They're trying to destroy and kill each other. And as a defensive player, and you go out there and you have a shot to hit Tom Brady or Joe Flacco or whoever it is as hard as you can and knock them out the game, that's what you do. That's part of the game. To me, as long as somebody's not doing something that's obviously, okay, I know this is illegal. This is after the play, but I'm going to try to knock him out the game. And to me, when it comes to the incentives with the play, it's like, well, this coach is going to give me $1,000, but I'm going to have to pay this $50,000 fine and get this penalty. Like, I'm not going to take that. So full disclosure, I played on teams. I'm not going to say who. None of it was Baltimore, just to exclude Baltimore, where it was like, hey, we're trying to get this guy out because this backup, he can't play. We know he can't play. And it was never, or like, hey, you get a pick, it's $1,000. If you knock this guy out, it's $1,000. And it was never like, oh, well, we're going to go outside the rules to do this. It was like, oh, okay, they're just doing this as a fun thing. But on the field, we're just worrying about what we have to do to win. And if somebody happened to get an interception or happened to knock somebody out the game, then somebody got paid. But yeah, so I do understand what you're saying, Chad. I would like to see that Vikings game again.
You should watch it because, like what you said, and I agree completely with what you said. Where you're trying to mash somebody, but you're staying within the rules to do it. If you get them out of the game, it's a big plus. I feel like they didn't care whether they were inside the rules or not when it came to Brett Favre in that game, especially later in the game. And the thing is that's interesting to me is because I always say that Brett Favre, I think, is like the biggest warrior quarterback I've ever seen. And Brett Favre in that game, he was taken out of the game briefly. And I think that he knew that the goal was to get him the fuck out. And he came back in that game later, and the dude was hobbled. And they were still consistently the low hits, the late hits, and there was a insane number of penalties being thrown about it, but they did not stop. And to me, when it comes down to the whole Bounty Gate thing, you know, at the end of the day, I'm sure all kinds of things happen, and that's not really what my biggest deal is like when I see something like that as a fan watching that, you're also taking the experience away from the fans too when they're trying to go stay outside of the rules to make sure you win a game in a dirty way. And that's just my personal opinion of it. But speaking of Greg Williams, me and CJ have had this constant conversation because, as you know, he's been in the Ravens division for the past year working with the Browns. This is a very, very serious question. We really would like to know an answer for this. Who the fuck is Freddie Kitchens?
Seriously.
I have no clue.
We are not alone. We are not alone.
I've never heard that name.
Even a former player doesn't know who the hell Freddie Kitchens is.
Sounds like a musical artist or something, or like some artist. Like
he is now the Cleveland Browns head coach. Prior to that, he was the interim offensive coordinator, and prior to that, he was a position coach for life. So he just came up out of nowhere. And some of the guest hosts that I've had on here in the past have gotten on me because I don't know who Freddie Kitchens is, and I'm like, I don't need to know because he's a nobody, and he's probably going to get fired along with the rest of the Cleveland crew in another year.
Yeah, no clue. It's a good name, though.
It is a pretty badass name. I mean, Freddie goddamn Kitchens. That's what I'd go by.
So Chris, a little bit more about the Saints here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've seen a lot of changes in the NFL with the way that the game flow has changed, the way that the rules have changed. Do you think that at this point now that the players and the officials combined even have any clue how to play the game when it comes to these new rules, especially the ones that they put in place this year with how to hit?
Yeah, I think it's too much. And I think I don't know as intimately as I knew before, but from my experience and from the people that I have talked to, my agent and his players, it's gone to the point it's just too much. I mean, I think people over the past couple of years, everybody's learned about CTE and concussions and making the game safer and kids and brain trauma, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all that stuff's important. But at bottom, it's like boxing or UFC. It's a dangerous sport, period. I mean, that's what it is. The players, we know, as long as people know what they're getting into, right? And so, like, yeah, there are some things that you could do for player safety, but when you're saying, like, hey, this DB needs to hit this running back a certain way, or I remember Ray Lewis sometimes would just get penalties because he hit somebody too hard.
Yeah, we've seen it.
He hits him in the great. I'm like, I remember playing. I think it was the 2010 playoffs. They were playing the Colts, Peyton Manning. He like hit some receiver in the end zone too hard, unnecessary roughness. I'm like, he just hit him too hard.
Ask Chad Ochocinco about some of those hits.
Yeah, and that's the point where you're at now, and I think that. And I think as a fan, like you kind of do lose out in a sense. And I think too, when we're talking about the Saints, Chad, to go back to that, we don't have to debate this fully. I think part of it's because you're biased, like Brett Favre's your guy. And I'm sure Baltimore Ravens defense have been in games where they've hit the quarterback a lot like that. They're getting away with a lot of calls. And it's kind of like a DB. Some refs let you grab and do things, and if they're letting you do that throughout the game, they're going to continue to do so. But it's just when it's against like the other team, it's like, well, I don't really like this.
Well, I think with the new rules, it seems to me, I think that the argument at this point could be made that the new rules and the way they're calling them and the things that players are trying to do to conform to these rules are making them less safe. Do you think that that's a valid point?
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. I think that there's definitely some truth to that because your whole entire life, and not even the whole entire life, even if you just started playing football in high school, you guys know this. You guys probably played football before. Like when you're about to hit somebody and you're on the field and you're like thinking and like a play's going on, you shouldn't be out there like, oh, should I hit him like this? Or you're just reacting.
Exactly.
And it's hard enough being a defensive player as it is. And I do like some of the rules when it comes to the quarterback, and maybe like some like shot blocking rules in the interior. But they have definitely gone too far. And I do think you probably are going to see more defensive backs injured because you're going to have people out there thinking about what they should be doing rather than just playing or reacting. And I just think could be one of those unintended consequences. But I just think we just need to accept that this game is dangerous. And I think for the fans, if defensive players could go back to even way 10 years ago, I think the game would be a lot better off for it.
Now, Chris, let's go back and talk about the Saints just for a little bit. Do any of these penalties really matter? Any of these rules really matter if they're not going to throw the flag on some of them? I mean, did you see last weekend's game?
I watched a little. I saw that the no call pass interference. That was bad. There were some defensive pass interference calls I saw last week that I didn't think were obvious calls. But I understand that I am biased as a former cornerback. But yeah, that call against the Saints, or that no call, that was terrible.
Well, the defender has even been out now in interviews saying, like, yeah, I hit him. Yeah, I hit him with my helmet. Yeah, he doesn't give a shit now. I mean, it doesn't matter. But
he got fined for the helmet hit too, by the way.
Yeah, $26,000, I think I read yesterday.
Yeah.
So what's interesting though, and this is something that I've not seen before, and maybe it's something that's happened, but we just don't know as much about it. And I don't know if you've followed this at all. Did you see that they have actually filed a lawsuit against the NFL about the non-call? And yesterday, a Democratic senator from Louisiana went on the floor of the Senate with a giant presentation about how the NFL is affecting our culture and about how this fucked up the economy in Louisiana by taking a Super Bowl from the Saints. What are your thoughts on that? 'Cause I think it's pretty crazy. In my opinion, I think it's nuts. I mean, it's a game. At the end of the day, it obviously has financial impact, but I've never seen it where people are trying to sue the NFL over a non-call.
Yeah, I think that congressman needs to quit grandstanding and sit his ass down. But, that's what politicians do. They want to go and show that they're for the people. As far as the fans, yeah, I think it's hard to, I mean, in the law, they always say, like, proximate cause. If you're going to sue somebody, was it the proximate cause of their downfall? And it's really kind of tenuous when you sit there and say, like, well, this led to us losing, what led us not going to the Super Bowl, what led us not our economy going to shit because we're expecting to go to the Super Bowl. But it's kind of on its face as a frivolous argument because it's from the beginning, you didn't plan on the year like, oh, we're going to be in the Super Bowl. So it wasn't like they had all this investment into the Super Bowl in April of last year because they knew they were going to the Super Bowl. Then this event at the end of the year just ruined their whole entire chances. So I think that on its face kind of like they had, once they made it to the playoffs, they had a hope they were going to the Super Bowl. But it's really hard to say that like, oh, we had this expectation that should be valid and should be supported as if this was something that was concrete and given to us by God and you guys messed it up. Another thing about that call too is that you guys know 2012 best Ravens team you've ever seen, Chad.
No, 2011.
Yeah, but it was 2012 playoffs.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Yeah, 2012 playoffs. Billy Cundiff misses a chip shot.
What happened to that football that day is my question.
After that play, if they would have called pass interference, you never know what happens the next play. There's no guarantee that the Saints would have made it to the Super Bowl. I mean, look at how the Patriots won against the Seahawks. The Seahawks, they're like at the 1 yard line, like, oh, this game's over. Interception at the 1 yard line, game over. Patriots win. And so it's hard to sit there and be like, well, we would have won the Super Bowl. So I think
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
I think when it comes to all that stuff, I agree with you 100%. I've just never seen. I think that the way that season ended for the Saints kind of speaks to the way the rules and officiating has went in the NFL with so many dramatic changes. I think that it's not like back to our previous point. I think that it's not only leaving the players confused and upset and aggravated. I think it's doing the exact same thing to the fans from that side of the coin. Yeah. And I think that kind of solidifies what happened a lot. And what happens a lot in any sport is the refs, while the refs don't always control an outcome, I think there's certain instances where it completely changed the dynamic of what was going on. But I've just never seen it come to a point where now people are actually trying to sue the NFL over it. I think it just speaks volumes about how crazy it's getting when it comes to all of these rules and all of this officiating. Yeah. But we may get something positive out of it because now the NFL is talking about being able to review pass interference calls, which I think is huge.
Yeah, I do think I was just about to ask you guys that too, because the idea popped in my mind. Because to me, even as a defensive player, it might be pass interference, and if it's a terrible call, you're going to want your coach to be like, no, go for bad for you. Like, hey, I didn't touch him. And I think it is like, hey, we can review this other stuff, but we can't review this play right here. Especially when it comes down to the playoffs, because just so many plays are just so vital. It can just change the whole course of the game. I would. I mean, there might be some unintended consequences for this action, but I'm for it. I think it would be good if you could review those type of calls.
Now, thinking about this, I'm going to play devil's advocate to both of you here. There is meritus in what the lawsuit is trying to accomplish, because there is a rule deep in the rule book that says the commissioner is able to overturn a decision and have the play in question replayed from the spot in which the penalty should have happened, start the game from that point on and move forward. But I think in all of our opinions, it's not going to happen. But what type of situation, if this is not the situation, would merit that rule to go into effect? What would be so damn egregious that would make it to the point of where the commissioner could invoke that rule and actually do that?
The rule, and it states that it's any penalty. Any penalty, the commissioner has the authority.
No, it's not just penalties. It says that it's any situation where they feel that it's like impacted a result of a game. And I think what sparked the lawsuit in this thing from what I've read, obviously I don't, you're the legal scholar, not us. But when we look at, from everything I've read about it, it basically says that why is this rule not being applied now that the NFL has came out and said, yes, we fucked this up, because they've came out and said, we fucked this up. The defender has said we fucked this up. And I think that basically the lawsuit is trying to, clearly it is not the actual intention of the lawsuit to be able to get them to redo this play, because we all know that's never going to happen. But I think it's trying to get them to qualify the existence of this rule if this rule cannot be applied and will not be applied under any circumstance.
Exactly. So what would it take in order to get for them to actually apply that rule? I mean, would they have to actually like dick slap somebody on the field and get a penalty on pass interference off of that? I mean, what would have to happen?
I don't know. I think it's a
that's a good point. I wasn't aware of the rule, but yeah, that is a good point. And I think because if that's not passing interference, then nothing's passing interference. I mean, it's clear as day.
So let's get off the boring stuff and ask you a couple quick questions, because we know you got a lot to do today and you get on with your day. So there's a couple of quick questions that a lot of fans would like to hear. Fans of you, fans of the NFL in general. When you were a kick returner, you guys take some hard hits. Who hit you the hardest, and what went through your head right after it happened?
Sean Taylor hit me, the late great Sean Taylor. Yeah. We were playing, it was my rookie year, we were playing the Redskins. We actually won that game. We only won 4 games that year.
Well, it's the Redskins. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, it was the Redskins, and he just came out of nowhere. Like, I saw, it was like the party in the Red Sea. I'm like, oh, I'm going to score. And all of a sudden, he just clotheslined me. And I was like, and it shocked me, like, because I didn't see him. And I mean, I didn't have concussion or anything, but I was just really impressed. I was like, man, this is a big, strong, powerful dude.
Who hit you the softest? Who gave you the least touch?
The softest?
Tom Brady can't hit him. Come on, man.
Good point.
The softest team and the worst team that I've seen in the NFL is the 2008 Lions.
Oh, yeah. Aren't they the team that went 0-16?
Yeah, I think they didn't win a game. They were terrible. I think a college team could have been in that year.
That's sad.
Yeah.
So
I mean, like the 01 Miami Hurricanes.
So
like the best college team ever would have been.
So talking about is same with that. Let's keep rolling on some of the Baltimore stuff because that's to us. You're a Raven. Hopefully, you're a Raven to yourself. But everybody in Baltimore would like to know the answer to this. Talk about the Ravens-Steelers rivalry for a second. Was it legit? Did you guys hate each other as much as the fans hate each other? What was that like to be a part of? Because I feel that rivalry has gotten really soft at this point, but back then I feel like that rivalry was intense.
Yeah, we didn't like them. They didn't like us. We didn't like their fans because you'd have their fans harassing like our family members and our wives and girlfriends. And it was the only NFL team where it kind of felt like college and high school. Because everybody in college and high school, you have your rival. In the NFL, you might have a team that you play in your division, but it's the NFL. You might play on that team one day. You have friends around that team, and it's just kind of a different. Each week is like the most important week in the NFL. But with Pittsburgh, it was different. The rivalry was real, and the animosity, especially on the defensive side of the ball, was there because you could see on film like Hines Ward. You want to talk about Bountygate? He would go after and he would try to hurt Ed Reed. I mean,
fuck that guy.
Ed Reed would be outside the play, and he would go out there and try to hit him. I remember we played them in the 2011 playoffs, the 2010 season, and Ed Reed told us all, like, hey, whatever the call is, stay back for the deep ball because I'm going out there. I'm going to fight Hines Ward on the first play. And he's like, so whatever the play is, if it's cover one, I'm not going to give you help because I'm just going to take him out and I'm going to go fight him. And the play ended up being a running play and they ended up fighting and we had to like pull them off each other. But you had stuff like that that you didn't respect. And the games were so physical and always so close. And we did play them twice a year. So that was a real rivalry. And I remember in 2011, the season opener, when we played Pittsburgh.
I was an ass kicker. I remember that one.
We did discuss, and Harbaugh did bring us all up. He's like, hey, we lost them last year in the playoffs, and I don't care. You guys do whatever it takes. If you guys get to talk, we're not going to take any more shit from this team ever again. And somebody's pushing you outside of the place, you push them back. And we went out there and we destroyed them. That was kind of like the college atmosphere. So yeah, it was great playing in those games because you never, in any other moment, you never had that feel like back in college, back in high school, like this is our rival. And the games meant so much too, because if you win a game in your division, it's like winning 2 games or losing 2 games. So yeah, it was definitely real.
Right on. I think that that rivalry is definitely one of the best in the NFL. Even though Chad still thinks it's a little bit soft nowadays, it's still probably one of the best in the NFL. But personally, and Chad feels the same way here in Baltimore, I would wine and dine a Steelers fan before I even associate with a Patriots fan. How do you feel about the New England Patriots?
Oh man, I'm sorry. I don't share the same animosity as you guys do. I do. I think definitely, and for the players, it was definitely Pittsburgh. And I don't really have any. I never really had interaction with Patriots fans, and it was just Pittsburgh fans because it seemed like they would just pop out of nowhere in Baltimore. They'd have their bumper stickers, and they would have their towels. But I never really remember seeing fans of other teams in Baltimore.
Well, the Patriots have. I feel like it's more of a thing with the fact that they're cheating pieces of shit. Baltimore got hosed really bad in a game against them the year the Patriots went undefeated, and the Ravens were fucking horrible that year. But
that game.
Yeah, a little bit of Rex Ryan, a little bit of the refs, a little bit of Kyle Bowler being Kyle Bowler, and the Ravens not being a very good team at the time. But It was still a shitty thing that happened. But it seems for some reason that over the years, and I think it's ever since the Ravens beat the Patriots in the playoffs in what was that, 2009, it seems like their fans spend more time fucking with Ravens fans than they do paying attention to their own football team. And I think that that's kind of what started this fan thing between Baltimore and New England that seems to really, really exist. And, I've been to games in New England. I've been to games in Baltimore. And it seems like for some reason, this is just like a continuing thing. And it used to constantly be the Steelers. And maybe it was just because the Steelers fans were in that position at the time that we're just doing that to Ravens fans. But it seemed to be like, you get the back and forth you get with your friends of like, oh, yeah, we fucked you up. You lost, blah, blah, blah. The stuff you get as a fan. But it was the opposite with Patriots fans. The Ravens rolled into their house, beat the fuck out of them, ran all over the place on them. And then all of a sudden their fans start harassing Ravens fans and it never stops. Yeah. And it seems to be that it seems like a lot of fans in other areas seem to say the same thing about the Patriots fans. And I personally can't wait for them to fall back into irrelevance, because let us not forget that they were one of the worst teams in football history for not just a season, for long, long, long time. And they will fall back into irrelevance at some point. But it seems to be a weird thing that it seems like maybe that's the fans' rivalry now, and the Steelers is still the players' rivalry. Because, we don't – the Ravens don't get the chance to go back at we get the chance twice a year to face Pittsburgh. And if the fans are lucky, we get to see it a third time in the playoffs. With the Patriots, the fans get to see them once every 4 years. They're bitter about whatever happens. You're probably going to get cheated when you play them. But I don't know. It seems interesting, because it seemed like when in 2012, especially when Baltimore went back into New England after avenging the whole situation with the missed kick with Cundiff, that it just seems like it was a different vibe at that point. It seemed like the torch kind of changed from Ravens fans and Steelers fans being so at each other's throats to Ravens and Patriots, which is kind of a strange thing, but it feels like that rivalry kind of took over what the Ravens and Steelers once were.
Yeah, I've never really heard it from the fans' perspective like that. The one thing I can say about the New England fans is that I was never impressed by them playing there. The stadium was never that loud. They just always kind of seemed like, oh, yeah, we're the Patriots. We're spoiled. We win all the time. Whereas I could say bad things about the Pittsburgh fans, but they love that team. They love football. And you go to a game in Pittsburgh and you're just like, okay, they are really into this. These are real football fans. Whereas in New England, it kind of seemed like they're just kind of snooty and just like, oh, yeah, we're here because we have a good team and we have guys that dress up like real Patriots. And so I was never really impressed by them. But yeah, I can see how you had some people like that. But.
They're the closest thing to come out of Britain, to be honest with you. So they are kind of snooty. They honestly, a lot of those fans were like that prior to New England actually getting success, and prior to getting Belichick and Tom Brady. They were just like, oh, yes, it's sports are going on this weekend, and then they open up their Cabernet, 2018, good year, and then they just they're all snooty. I hear you on that one. But who do you think is the greatest of all time, non-asterisks?
All time? It's hard.
Any position.
At any position?
Yeah. Who are you partial to?
Probably Jerry Rice.
Jerry Rice.
The best player, I would say the best player that I ever played with, I think, was Ed Reed. And the reason why
this year.
Yeah, and the reason why I say Ed Reed because you guys are WWE fans. What was the Hitman Hart? The best there is, the best there was.
It's the best there will be. Yeah.
And Ed Reed did things that we never saw before, we never saw during, and we haven't seen afterwards. Like some of the plays, like if you really break down like some of the defenses we're in and what his responsibility was and what everybody else's responsibilities were, and the interceptions that he made. I mean, I remember in Tennessee we were watching, and I think it was like the Dolphins game when they played the Dolphins in the playoffs. And Reed had like 2 interceptions that game, and we're just in the defense room. We had to rewind it like 1,000 times. Like, what is he doing? How did he know? What is going on? I remember calling Fabian Washington because he was in Baltimore in 2008. And I was like, what defense were you guys in? Like, why did he do that? And he just made plays like that no other player, you just weren't supposed to make. And it's unfortunate because I don't think we realized how injured he always was during the last 4 years of his career. But if you look at those first 4 or 5 years of Ed Reed, I mean, it's just a completely different level. And from a defensive player, is that there's one thing you have a Ray Lewis or a Warren Sapp, or even, like a Revis at his prime, because Revis was the best corner that I seen. If you're a quarterback, you had to take account of Ed Reed every play, because it didn't matter what the play call was. He could be anywhere on the field. And that type of weapon and that type of pressure on a quarterback, I was like, he's the best defensive player that I ever played with. Even just player, period, that I ever played with. Because I don't think we'll see a safety make plays like he did. And I mean, probably one day, but it's going to be a long time, most likely.
If he didn't
we'll never see another Ed Reed.
I agree, but if he didn't stop fucking lateraling that football, I was just going to get ready to go out there and do something myself. Goodness, that guy was a lateraling machine. I mean, he was getting the interceptions, great, but then he would lose the ball on a lateral. Nobody knew he was going to do the lateral. He was told not to do the lateral, and then he would do the damn lateral.
Yeah. But that's Ed Reed. You gotta take the good with the bad, right?
That's
there.
The truth. And he's probably one of the greatest of all times. And do you think he's going to get into the Hall of Fame this year? First ballot?
Yeah, that's something. Somebody just lost their mind. I mean, it's not even close. I hate when people say Ronnie Lott or something like that. I'm like, just stop. Like, no.
Yeah, no, he's the best of all time.
Yeah, it's like I was a 49ers fan growing up as a kid, and so maybe that's why I'm partial to Jerry Rice. And that's why I say probably him, because you just look at year after year after year with his numbers. Yeah, so it's hard. It's hard. Everybody's saying Tom Brady because of the championships, but I mean, you have Belichick there, and that makes a big difference. If Belichick's not there, Tom Brady's not winning 5 Super Bowls.
And deflated footballs and video cameras and anything that could involve an asterisk.
Yeah.
Well, we're not bitter on anything, but
yeah, they just keep winning.
What do you miss most about being in the game? What do you miss about game day, about being on the field? What you wake up every morning and go, damn, I miss that?
No, I really, to tell the truth and to be really as truthful as possible, since I stopped playing, I haven't missed anything. But that's just been my personality. I've just never been a misser. Like when I went to Boise State, I hated my first semester. I just hated it. I didn't really like the players. I didn't like my classes. I didn't like where I was living in the dorms. And everybody's like, oh, you don't like it? It's like, do you miss home? I was like, no. It's like, you don't miss home? You hated something? I was like, no, it's just my life now. This is what I have to deal with. So that's always kind of been like my personality. And plus I love what I do now. I love going to law school. I love being an attorney. I do sometimes, like every now and then, like talking to you guys, I'll think about moments and it'll put like a smile, satisfaction on my face. Like, oh yeah, that was cool. I remember that moment. Or I remember that moment in the locker room talking with the guys or hanging out with the guys. That was really cool. Or sometimes like last week, I see the guys right before the game. It's like, oh, I remember that moment, like a day of a playoff game and you're about to go in there and play, that excitement and everything going in. That's cool. Like those guys must be really happy type of thing. But yeah, as far as like missing, having that feel like, oh, I need to do that again. I feel like I kind of like got all that out of me. And so when I do look back, I is just content. And it's crazy now because I don't even it's not even like I did anything. It just seems like it was like 100 years ago. And I was just like, I did that, but it doesn't even feel like I did. But yeah, so it's a long-winded answer, but I do have a lot of dreams about football though. it's back there in my subconscious. Even though I don't get used to it, it's back there. It's definitely back there. And it's all Baltimore too. It's always Baltimore.
So it should be. It's in all of our dreams.
Well, we'll get you this upcoming season, Chris. There is a new excitement in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson playing, and we won't go into all of that because that's also a huge controversy here. But we will get you out to one of our tailgates one day because we want you to see it the way we see it. So the next time you're around, I know we've talked about it a bunch of times in the past, but the next time you're around and we can make it happen, come tailgate with CJ and I. We have a really good time down there, and we'll see you there, and you can come enjoy it from our side one day.
Yeah, definitely. I need to go out there. I haven't been to a game in 2 years in Baltimore, so it'll be nice to come out.
Yeah, it is rejuvenated in a very, very serious way in Baltimore. I don't know what it's going to look like after the loss to the Chargers. Me and CJ were at that game too, but that stadium is everything that has started to disappear from the spirit in the Baltimore fans is back. And so it's loud. It's loud again. Fans are there. The stadium's full again. We stopped seeing a lot of that over the course of the past, we'll say 2 seasons with the direction that the team has went. But now, the division is looking better. The Browns are actually winning games now.
Yeah.
There is a new excitement in Baltimore. The fire is lit again. I cannot wait for next football season to see how they do and to see how the fans are, because that's why I like to go. I actually prefer watching the games at home, but I like being there because the excitement and the energy is back, and it's disappeared over the past couple of seasons, but it is definitely in full force again, and I think it'd be great to have you come out with us.
Yeah, it'd be great, and it's good to hear that Baltimore is trying to continue that tradition, because it has been a tradition of winning. So
it has been. And Chris, don't want to hold too much more of your time, but I did want to touch on what you're doing now in the your post NFL career. So you've taken a kind of a unique turn here as far as your post academia is concerned. Not many people do this. A lot of people go to the media. A lot of people go coaching. Yeah. You're a lawyer now, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So tell me, how did that all get started? And first off, did you get your bachelor's degree when you were still in college back before you got drafted in the NFL? Did you get that?
Yeah. Yes.
And what was your major?
Political science.
Political science. Okay, relative to the law. So what made you want to go back to school and get the MBA and then start? Did you pass the bar yet, or where are you at with that?
Yeah, so I've been practicing for over a year now, so you can't practice unless you pass the bar. So I actually took the bar in California because one day we're probably going to move there. And I practice mainly I practice an immigration law firm. And immigration, 99% is all federal law. So as long as you pass the bar in one state, you can practice immigration in any state. But I took the California bar because in case I want to do any type of, criminal defense work or corporate law or any other type of law in California when we move there, then I'll be able to do so without having to take the bar exam again. But yeah, at Boise State, I took a con law class. Our teacher was great. He challenged us. He didn't treat us like children. It was engaging. He really taught us to really look at both sides of an issue. And that was the one thing I knew. It's like, this is just as enjoyable as football. And so at that point, I knew that when I was done playing, I was going to go to law school. So there was never any type of doubt. It was just when I was going to go to law school. So immediately when I was done in 2014, that year, I went and had all my stuff ready. I already took the LSAT. Already had my letters of recommendation. I already wrote my statement. Yeah, and I came back out in the D.C. area because living in Baltimore, I wanted to come out in this area. Still had friends like Chad living in Baltimore, and really wanted to be around the East Coast area because I wasn't ready to settle down in California yet. So that's been the route. It's been good, and I like new challenges. So I think that's why I kind of wanted to stay away from sports when I was done, because that sports was my whole life, since I was 6 years old. And I'm the type of person that likes new challenges, new things to explore and conquer and to do. So I couldn't ask for anything better.
And we couldn't ask to have a better guest this week, and a guest host, of course. Thank you very much, Chad, and I appreciate that. But you were the first professional football player we've had come on the show. I don't know if you know this, but my podcast primarily has been geared towards actually interviewing fans of different fan bases, like the Vikings and the Cowboys, just to get a feel for their culture and whatnot. But I talked to Chad, and I didn't think I was ever going to have an opportunity again. So I figured get a player on here and actually grill them about their career and see how far they went, what they're doing now. And I thought that would be a great opportunity. I really appreciate you coming on and even giving us an opportunity to hear your story.
Yeah, thanks. It was fun. It was good. It was good talks, good chat. And it is cool to see, like, from the fans' perspective and from Patriots fans compared to Pittsburgh fans.
Wait. Let's keep this in perspective. Fuck them both. It's not ever going to change. Fuck the Steelers and fuck the Patriots. Fuck them both, and fuck Freddie Kitchens too.
What? Freddie goddamn Kitchens.
Freddie Kitchens. That's the best name. Coach of the year, Freddie. Was it Frederick Kitchens?
Probably.
I didn't look it up. You know what? I'm gonna look that shit up right now.
Mr. Kitchens. All right. He should be a chef, right?
No, fuck that. I don't want that guy tainting my industry. He's a Cleveland Brown.
No, apparently his real name is Freddie. I'll be damned.
Kitchen.
Yeah. That's one hell of a name. But anyway, guys, I really appreciate you coming on board this week and doing the show with me. Chris, if you don't mind in the future, I'd like to do a part 2 with you at some point.
Oh yeah, that was fun. That was real fun.
Awesome. Well, maybe we'll talk some. Maybe we'll talk some wrestling next time.
Yeah, we'll talk some wrestling. We got the Bret the Hitman Hart on here. You know, we got that.
Yeah, I love that reference. I'm a big fan of the best there is, the best there was, best there ever will be.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for coming on. I'll disconnect the call now, and I'll talk to y'all later.
All right.
It's not often that you get a chance to interview a former NFL player and current lawyer. So I got to tell you, I'm very happy with the opportunity that I had today to get Chef Chad Wells on here to talk with Chris Carr, and really appreciate both of their times today and had a great interview with them. And I hope that you all enjoyed it too. I think next week I'm going to try to get Sean Alvashire back on the show to talk more about Cap's situation, about the Dolphins, about his love for the Saints, and we'll see what we can do from there. There's no promises on that. It's all going to depend on the schedule. I'll try to do what I can to get him on the show. If not, I'm sure I can get at PFT PM Posse and at the Real Forno to come back on, and we can try to bullshit you guys for another hour or so. We always have a good time talking to you guys, and we like to bring up what's going on in the NFL. So until then, until next week, I really appreciate you guys continuing to listen, subscribe, like, share with your friends, give us a review. More importantly, give us the review so that we know what we're doing. Let us know if there's anything we could do to improve on the show. We're always listening. So thank you very much, and until next week, y'all stay classy.